Welcome to Tell Us in the Dark.
Some places, some people, some stories, they're meant to be forgotten, but not every story stays buried. Tonight, we venture into the terrifying unknown. Whispers become screams, and what's lurking in the shadows may be closer than you think. These are 3 urban legends, disturbing, real, and unforgettable. Are you ready to step into the dark? You may want to keep the lights on for this one. I was living in an old house. It stood alone on the outskirts of town, the perfect escape. Or so I thought. It was a beautiful place, quiet, peaceful. The house had been empty for years. I was the first to step inside in decades. Aside from the occasional creak, it felt warm, cozy, safe. The chaos of the city felt a million miles away. I felt at peace. But I wouldn't feel that way for long. At first I dismissed the noises. I thought it was my imagination. It was a big house. Old houses settle, it's normal. But the sounds, they were too deliberate, too even, like someone pacing right above me. Night after night I'd lie awake, listening to the soft, slow footsteps. They always seemed to be right above my bedroom. I didn't even realize the house had an attic. Not until that 3rd night. The footsteps were so clear coming from above. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was nothing, just the house settling. But the footsteps grew louder every night. And then, one night, I decided to investigate. I found the attic door hidden in the hallway ceiling. The kind that pulls down with a ladder. I stood beneath it, heart pounding, sweat dripping down my back. The handle was cold to the touch. The air that hit me was freezing, thick with dust. It felt like stepping into a forgotten world, untouched for decades. Each breath I took was heavy, laden with the weight of time and neglect. The cold seemed to seep into my bones, making every movement feel sluggish and deliberate. And the smell of something rotting, it was a pungent, almost tangible presence that clung to the back of my throat. I climbed up slowly, each step a cautious venture into the unknown. The scent grew stronger, more oppressive, as if warning me to turn back. The ladder creaked beneath me. Every groan of the wood echoed in the silence, amplifying the sense of isolation. It felt as though the attic itself was alive, watching, waiting. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a reminder of my vulnerability. My flashlight barely pierced the darkness. Old boxes and cobwebs. Shadows danced at the edges of the beam, creating fleeting shapes that played tricks on my mind. I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me, the remnants of forgotten lives scattered around. That's all I could see. The clutter was overwhelming, a chaotic jumble of memories and neglect. Each box, each piece of furniture seemed to hold a story, a fragment of a life long gone. The air was thick with the scent of decay and abandonment, and then I saw her, a shadowy figure barely discernible in the dim light. My heart skipped a beat, a cold shiver running down my spine. She seemed to materialize out of the darkness, an ethereal presence that defied explanation.
She was huddled in the corner, her back to me. The way she sat, so still and silent, sent a wave of unease through me. It was as if she was a part of the attic, an extension of its eerie stillness. Hair matted and clothes torn. She looked like she had been there for years, forgotten by the world. Her appearance was a stark contrast to the lifeless surroundings, a living testament to the passage of time. For a moment, I thought she was just some homeless girl, hiding. But then she turned. The movement was slow, deliberate, as if she was aware of my presence and was deciding whether to acknowledge it. The anticipation was almost unbearable, and I saw her face. It was a visage of sorrow and despair, eyes that seemed to hold the weight of countless stories. Her expression was haunting, a mix of fear and resignation. In that moment, I realized that this was no ordinary encounter. This was a meeting with the past, a glimpse into a forgotten soul.
Her face, it was wrong. Her eyes hollow. Her mouth hung open like she was trying to scream, but couldn't. Before I could move, she lunged at me. I fell back, crashing down the ladder. When I looked up, she was gone.
I moved out the next day. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear footsteps above me. They follow me.
When I first moved into the apartment, it seemed perfect. Quiet neighborhood, friendly neighbors, and the rent surprisingly low. I couldn't believe my luck.
Everything seemed fine at first. People waved from their windows, said hello in the hallways. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to notice something off.
One by one, my neighbors started disappearing. It began with the elderly couple across the hall. I hadn't seen them in weeks. No hellos, no good mornings, just silence.
When I asked the landlord, he shrugged it off, said they moved suddenly. Strange. Then the family 2 doors down vanished, gone just like that. No moving trucks, no goodbyes. Their mail piled up, their door remained locked.
Soon, I was the only one left on my floor. All the other apartments stood empty, like gaping maw. I told myself it was just coincidence. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was happening, something sinister.
I was alone, trapped in this building with what? I didn't know, but I could feel it watching me.
One night I woke to a sound, footsteps in the hallway, slow dragging footsteps, like someone was pulling a heavy weight. I peeked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the footsteps, they continued.
Then came the knocking. It was faint at first, like someone tapping lightly on the walls. Then it grew louder, more insistent. They were trying to get in.
I called the landlord, but no one answered. The knocking moved closer. I could hear a voice, a whisper, "Let us in." I packed my things, leaving everything behind. I had to get out.
The next morning I went back to get the rest of my stuff, but it was gone. The entire building. Just an empty lot, as if it had never been there.
It was one of those websites, the ones you're not supposed to visit, hidden in the dark corners of the internet. I'd heard the rumors, the warnings. Never enter the Red Room. They said it was cursed, a myth, a legend.
But that night I was curious, and more than a little drunk. I wanted to see it, to find it, the Red Room.
I found it. The site was bare. Just a single red button in the center of the screen. Simple, stark, menacing. It pulsed with an eerie light, beckoning me closer. The word "Enter" glowed on the screen. My hands trembled as I moved the mouse, clicking the button.
The screen flickered. Darkness. Then a chat window popped up, empty at first. Then a message appeared. "Welcome, we've been expecting you." The words hung there, threatening.
My heart raced. It felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. Each beat echoed in my ears, louder and louder, drowning out every other sound. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, making my hands shake uncontrollably. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. They trembled, hesitating to press the keys. The screen in front of me seemed to mock my indecision. I knew I had to do something, but I was paralyzed by fear. The cold sweat on my forehead dripped down, blurring my vision, frozen. I couldn't look away. My eyes were glued to the screen, wide open, unblinking. The room around me faded into darkness, and all that existed was the glowing monitor. I felt like I was being pulled into the abyss, unable to break free from its grasp. The chat window remained open. Messages kept popping up, one after another, each more disturbing than the last. The words blurred together, forming a sinister pattern that I couldn't decipher. It was as if the screen was alive, taunting me with its cryptic messages, but the screen, it went black. Suddenly, without warning, the light vanished, plunging me into darkness. My reflection stared back at me from the black screen, eyes wide with terror. I reached out, hoping to bring the light back, but the darkness was impenetrable, and then a video feed appeared. It flickered to life, distorted and glitchy. The image was unclear, but I could make out a dimly lit room. Shadows danced across the screen, creating an eerie, unsettling atmosphere. I leaned in closer, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was a dark room, barely lit. The shadows seemed to move on their own, creating an illusion of life in the otherwise still room. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the darkness itself was pressing down on me. I could feel the tension building, the sense of dread growing stronger with each passing second. A single chair in the center. It stood out, stark and ominous, in the middle of the room. The chair was old, wooden and worn, as if it had seen countless horrors. It was empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was waiting for someone, or something.
That's when I saw him, a shadowy figure emerge from the darkness, slowly, deliberately. He moved with an eerie grace, as if he was part of the shadows themselves. My breath caught in my throat as I watched him approach the chair. A man, tied to the chair, struggling, screaming. The sound was muffled. His eyes were wide with terror, darting around the room, searching for a way out. The ropes dug into his skin, leaving angry red marks. His muffled screams echoed in the room, a haunting reminder of his desperation. Distant, but the fear in his eyes. It was real. I felt it. His eyes locked onto mine, pleading for help. I could see the raw, primal fear in them, a fear that resonated deep within me. It was as if I could feel his pain, his hopelessness. The connection was undeniable, and it shook me to my core.
The man's muffled screams grow louder. The whispers intensify. They seemed to come from all around, a chorus of sinister voices that filled the room. The air grew colder, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The whispers were unintelligible, but their tone was unmistakable. They were filled with malice, with a dark intent that sent chills down my spine. The man's screams became more frantic, more desperate, as if he knew that time was running out. The room seemed to close in around me, the darkness becoming more oppressive. I knew I had to do something, but I was frozen, trapped in the nightmare that was unfolding before me. I tried to close the window. To click out, my heart was racing, my fingers trembling as I desperately tried to escape the nightmare unfolding on my screen. Each click felt like an eternity, but nothing was happening. The cursor moved, but the window remained stubbornly open, mocking my futile attempts to shut it all down. I pressed the power button, hoping to cut off the source of my terror, but even that seemed to betray me. The screen stayed on, the images still there, haunting me. It was as if the laptop had a mind of its own, refusing to grant me the mercy of darkness. But my screen, it was frozen. The glitch effect made it even more sinister, distorting the faces and words into something out of a nightmare. I could see my reflection in the screen, my eyes wide with fear, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. More messages popped up in the chat window, taunting me, "Don't leave now." Each message was like a dagger to my sanity, cutting deeper and deeper. They knew I was trying to escape, and they were enjoying every second of my torment. The show is just beginning. The words sent a chill down my spine. What show? What did they have planned for me? I felt like a puppet, my strings being pulled by some unseen, malevolent force.
I slammed my laptop shut. The sound echoed in the silent room, a brief moment of defiance. But it was short-lived. The darkness around me seemed to close in, the silence amplifying my fear. But it didn't stop. The screams. They were faint, distant, but unmistakable. I covered my ears, trying to block them out, but they only grew louder in my mind. It was as if they were coming from inside my head, a relentless assault on my senses. The voices, they continued, unrelenting. My phone lit up. Each notification was a reminder that I was not alone, that they were still watching, still waiting. The light from the screen cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the room feel even more oppressive. It was a message, an unknown number. My hands shook as I picked up the phone, my mind racing with possibilities. Who could it be? What did they want from me? The uncertainty was almost as terrifying as the messages themselves.
The sound of a notification chime. It was a sound I had heard countless times before, but now it felt like a death knell. Each chime was a reminder that I was being hunted, that there was no escape. The screen displays a text message, "We know where you are." The words were simple, but their impact was devastating. They knew. They had found me. My sanctuary had been breached, and there was nowhere left to hide. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and paralyzed with fear. Panic. It flooded through me. I unplugged everything, the internet, my phone, everything, but it didn't matter. Every device I owned, it lit up. The same message, "You're next."
I left the house that night, threw away my laptop, my phone, everything, but sometime. When I'm alone in the dark, I still get texts. That same number, no message, just a red dot, a reminder.
The red room, it never really lets you go. 3 stories, 3 warnings, whispered from the forgotten corners of the world. Some legends are born from truth, twisted by time, hidden in the shadows. But remember, the things we fear most are often the things we refuse to believe. So, the next time you hear a strange knock, a scream in the distance, or see a message you can't explain, maybe, just maybe, you should believe, because you never know what might be lurking in the dark. Like and subscribe if you dare.